Hello, welcome to another episode of the G.I. Joe New News Review. I am David Allen. Today I am coming to you to talk to you about Skybound, all things Skybound, and there's lots to talk about. Let's go a little bit back in time. A few years ago, we were in what was called the dark year of G.I. Joe comics. We did not have a comic. The IDW Larry Hama Real American Hero series had ended in November, and there was no news as to who was going to pick the new pick up the comics, be the new company picking up the comics. There had been speculation about Skybound, but nobody really knew for sure. Um, all the people that I know, I reached out to, and they couldn't say anything. Then Larry Hama made some comments at a convention in, I guess it was early, late November, early December of that year, that he was hired to continue his series from 301, and that it would continue with a new company and that he was starting to write. So that speculation got heated, and people were like, well, who's going to be the new company? What is going on here? So then I guess the solicitations came out in March, for March, April, May, for I guess it was maybe the solicitation were in April. And so there was a mystery project that was solicited in the Diamond Previews Guide, which is where most comic stores get their comics from, is Diamond, for a new series from Skybound called Void Rivals. And so people were speculating, what could this be? Could this be some new G.I. Joe? It said it's going to combine a whole bunch of properties and things like that, and it was going to be a totally new world, and the fans were going to love it, and this and that. We didn't know what it was. So the speculation was ramping up for Skybound to get the G.I. Joe brand. So then in early June, there was a summit, I guess you would call it a retail summit online, that people attended, comic stores and big retailers attended to speak with Skybound. And they revealed that they were going to have the license to G.I. Joe and Transformers, and that it was going to start with Void Rivals, and there was going to be a whole universe called the Energon Universe. So then, the day before that it was supposed to come out, it leaked that there was a special character in Void Rivals, the first issue, and that ended up being Sky. I can't think of his name. Sky, so, some jet character, Skyhawk or Sky something or other. Um, let's see if I can figure out. Hold on, give me a second here. Sorry, this isn't good for live TV, but um, I have a picture of a character. Oh, oh, there he is. This guy. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, which is typical of these type of things. When I try to remember something, I can't remember it. Um, so you guys can tell me in the comments, but I know who it is. You know who it is, regardless. So then Void Rivals #1 came out, broke all records. It was a huge hit. And then it was announced at the back that they would be continuing with um, Transformers, Larry Hama's G.I. Joe, and there would be a new Duke and Cobra Commander miniseries starting later in the year. So first, Transformers came out. Daniel Warren Johnson has done an incredible job with this series. I really, really enjoy it. It's probably one of the best Transformers I've ever read. And there's been some decent Transformers over the years. Simon Furman and a bunch of other guys have done some really good stuff, but the the take on this Transformers is a little grittier, a little bit more realistic, and I like it a lot. I think the writing is really good. Daniel Warren Johnson is slated to leave with issue 24, 25. He has announced, which is sad. I didn't want to see him leave, but that's the way it goes with these things. So, Campfire. Thank you, Talking Joe. Talking Joe is the expert on all things G.I. Joe comics, and I usually referred to them, but I could not remember that character. Thank you very much. So then Transformers came out, and then Larry Hama's series came out. Uh, Hello, Stephen. Thanks for joining me. Then Larry Hama's series came out, which was 301, continued from 300, where IDW left off. And the right off the bat, the new series was very, very dynamic. I loved the art style of Andy Kubert's covers, and the gentleman that is doing the art on it. I can't think of the guy that's doing the art on Larry Hama's series. Let me see. Hold on. Another pause while I get that. Um, I think it is. Um, I think it is Mooneyham. Tom Mooneyham is the artist on the new series with Larry Hama, and then there was a couple of fill-in artists with Paul Pelletier and Chris Mooneyham. Sorry, boy, I'm making a bunch of mistakes here. I really need to have Mark Sutton on this, to get all these names correct. But so Chris Moynihan did the first arc. Paul Pelletier did the second arc. Chris Moynihan is back for the next arc, and it has been announced that Paul Pelletier is coming back for another arc around issue 16 or so. So that has been set up. And it's been very good. The coloring, the art, the covers, the writing. Larry has been on really one of the best story arcs, this new world, Cobra World War. It's really been a really cool story, and there's lots of cool stuff going on. There's zombies and cyborgs and ninjas and the Joes and Destro's Iron Grenadiers. Everybody's involved in this, so it's been a really cool story so far. We'll see how it goes forward, but it looks really good. But this is about the Energon universe I'm focusing on here. So then, in I believe December, Duke came out, and that was done by Joshua Williamson, which I do know him, Joshua Williamson, and he's a really good writer. He's worked at DC for a while. He's working on Action Comics. He did a stint on Green Arrow that was incredible. He's working on the All In crossover event at the moment with DC, which the relaunch of a bunch of new titles for Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern, and Aquaman, and a whole bunch of other series. And that's been really good, and it's received very good. But Joshua Williamson, he understands G.I. Joe. He's a huge G.I. Joe fan. It also has the art of Tom Riley, which this miniseries has been incredible. It's really out of the box for Duke, really threw a lot of the fans for a loop. We did not expect some of the stuff that was going on in this series with Duke. So it was very, very good, and they did an excellent job. Then Joshua Williamson also, because he said he couldn't do it all in one book, he said, why don't we do Cobra Commander? And so he did that. Cobra Commander came out, and that's by Andrea Milano is the artist. And this was another surprise hit and threw the fans for a loop. And There's all kinds of stuff going on in this series. It incorporated Cobra La, and that's no big surprise. Everybody knows if you're following Energon that Cobra La has been connected to the Energon universe, uh, and they're in a bunch of series, GI Joe and Void Rivals, and so on. So it's no big surprise there. But there's an edge, a darkness to this series that we hadn't seen in GI Joe before. um, um, I'm very happy about characters that have been toys that they've been in comics, but there's not a lot of knowledge about those characters, and I like it when they do like origins of characters and they develop these characters that there's not a lot of content on. So I think the Darklon story that was in Destro, which we're going to be getting to in a minute, has been really cool. And Chameleon, same thing. I think those characters needed some development and needed a little bit of breaking out of the box of the mold of their original toys. So a lot of these characters, we do get the file cards, we get the toy, but we don't know a lot because they don't appear in content that much. So then we got Scarlet. So Kelly Thompson and Marco Ferrari are the team on Scarlet. And this is a really neat story. This introduces the Arashikage and gets into the spy area of GI Joe and the espionage part of GI Joe that Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow and Scarlet and Jinx and Chuckles are all involved with. And I love the art on this series, and I think this is a really cool twist on the Arashikage and that part of the GI Joe lore. So then they did Destro, which Destro was done by Dan Waters and Andre Presson. Bresson. And I really, really enjoyed this artwork as well. I think they've picked some really good artists, and they really picked some good writers to get into these corners of the GI Joe universe that we haven't really gotten a chance to see before. Uh, yeah, Jinx and Scarlet was really a cool twist, and that's the fun thing about these. There's been lots of twists and turns, so it's not cookie cutter. It's not what you expect, and they really kept the surprises coming. I think they've done a really good job with a lot of this stuff. So, so there you go. Destro was the Darklon and the Chameleon uh, stuff that you were asking about, Steven. And there's some really cool twists with those characters. I don't want to spoil them in case people haven't gotten the last issues of these, but I think developing these characters that we don't have a lot of content on is the way to go because they're new, they're fresh, they're things that we don't have the experience with, and I think that's what we need. You know, nothing against what Larry Hama's doing, but I can only read so many stories about the brainwave scanner. You know, been a million stories about that. Can we get a little bit of different stuff? Right now, Larry's doing some different stuff with the zombies and the androids and the Rashikage and Cobra Island and this new war. So I'm very happy about that. So then it was announced that G.I. Joe was going to get its own ongoing series. So we were all speculating what was going to happen with that. It hadn't been announced who was going to be writing it, but then it was announced, and it was going to be Joshua Williamson was going to write the ongoing series of G.I. Joe, and that Tom Riley from Duke was going to come back on. So that was a fantastic revelation, and they revealed this beautiful piece of art for it, and I really like this. Now, I think this looks a lot like the first annual. There's a piece of art on the back side of the annual where it kind of has like this ambiguous like background. It has all the cobras like standing at a really interesting pose, and I really think this kind of reminds me of that, except it includes the Joes and the Cobras, and I really like it. I really do. Another part of the Destro that I forgot to mention is it has a feud with my favorite faction of GI Joe, the Crimson Guard, and it has a really cool angle on my favorite characters for the GI Joe property, Tomax and Saymat, the Crimson Guard twins. So I spoiled a little bit of that. So um, Now, see, I did not know that, Talking Joe, but he says that Baroness and Chameleon has matching moles on their bodies, apparently. Well, that makes sense because they were both the same toy, just with different hair. It was used the same sculpt has were used the same toy, so it makes sense that they would both have maybe the same mold. I don't know. That's weird, but thank you very much, Mark, for letting us know that. So um, then over the summer, Skybound's chugging along. They're doing really good. They're putting out a lot of good content. They did the Kickstarter for the Omnibus GI Joe: A Real American Hero Omnibus series, where you can get all the issues of the original series either as a Cobra or as a Joe faction. And so I got the Joe faction, but I have a little bit of disclaimer here. I have this material 3 times over already. So I did not go all in on this material. But I did do some of it. I did do a little bit of it. I'm going to share some of that with you here because I have the original run of GI Joe, all 155 issues, and some duplicates because when I was a child, I read those comics so much I had to get second copies because I read them so much I deteriorated them. So I got just volume one, which is the first 50 issues. And I haven't even unpacked it yet. It's still in its cellophane. And from what I can tell, it looks beautiful. I love this red. There's a name for this um, page coloring, but I can't think of the name of it. And then there's a little red, white, and blue um, uh, like divider thing that you can use when you're reading. You can save your page or whatever. So I think it's beautiful. I think it's embossed. You know, they did a really good job with all these sets. On online, a lot of people have showed their boxes, and I think the boxes look beautiful. But so I really didn't feel the need to get another complete set because I had 3 pretty much complete sets. I have the original series. I have them all in the trade paperback series that began at Devil's Due and then ended up at IDW and completed. And I have 15 volumes of that. And I have a bunch of like reprint series like Marvel GI Joe Tales or Marvel Tales, whatever it is. 15 issues of that. And then IDW did a bunch of like specials like best of appearances of like um, um, Astro, Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, Cobra Commander, and things like that. Um, so they've done a lot of reprints. They've done annual reprints. They've done special mission reprints. They've done a lot of stuff. Um, so I have a lot of duplicates of this material. So I just didn't feel it was necessary. And I don't have to explain it. I'm just doing it for the sake of this video. Uh, um, Yeah, see, and there's a lot of collectors out there. I don't want to take the have the series multiple times like Steven. I don't want to take anything away from this project. It was a beautiful project, and it kickstarted over 3 million copies, or 3 million backers, I should say, kickstarted. So this is one of the greatest kickstarters ever for comics. It's probably the biggest ever. Mark could probably correct me if I'm wrong on that. But it is the biggest comic book Kickstarter ever. And so there was a lot of really cool stuff that came out with this Kickstarter that I did want. So that's why I Kickstarted it, for all the extra cool stuff that was coming with it. But you had to get one volume of the omnibuses. So I picked the G.I. Joe Volume 1, and that's what I got. So then it comes with a whole bunch of really cool stuff. First off, it comes with people were complaining at the Kickstarter that it didn't come with annual number one, because the reason being is there's no new comic book content in this. It's only like representing the file cards. It's representing like discussion on the animated series. It shows some new artwork of characters that are coming down. It was just a like fan type thing with a new cover and stuff like that. And let me see if this has that cool cover that I was telling you about that I thought kind of looked like. Yeah, it does. So I'll show this cover off, and it kind of looks like that that amorphous type background to that issue one. And I thought it was really cool and I liked it. And the fact that they did that with issue one, I thought that was a cool homage. Maybe people don't all agree with me that maybe it looks different, but I thought it looked really cool. So the fans got their way. We got the first annual with it as a reprint. Um, Oh, so it was $3 million. Okay, so I was thinking it was 3 million backers, but it was actually over $3 million. Thank you, Mark, for that. So then we got a reprint of the special. Now this is the only GI Joe special that came out in the original 155 issues. Now the reason behind this special was Larry Hama didn't really care for Todd McFarlane's art, and they got into a bit of a disagreement on it, and so they replaced him. And I believe Ron Wagner, no, I believe Marshall Rogers did the artwork on the interior of the original issue, which I believe is 63. You can correct me on that one too, Mark. Um, if I'm correct, I believe it's 63. It has Zanzibar on the cover, has Pogo, and it has Raptor on the cover. That's what this represents, that first that issue. And this was the original art by Todd McFarlane, and they reprinted this because people again complained that this wasn't in the omnibus. But they reprinted it and they put a cool gold embossed logo on it. But other than that, it's exactly the same. Um, so there you have it. So there's the special. And then, of course, we couldn't have a G.I. Joe omnibus Kickstarter without a new version of issue 21. Now, this version is like a lenticular version with a Storm Shadow cover. Now, I believe you could get the Snake Eyes cover or the Storm Shadow. I have this comic probably about 10 times over. So I thought, hey, let me get something different. Let me get a Storm Shadow version of this cover. It's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful cover. I think they did a really good job. So this is issue 21, lenticular Storm Shadow cover. You can kind of see it there. So that came with it as well. Yeah, that I just thought it kind of looked like that amorphous background of that issue, Mark. And I've talked to other people about it. I think I talked to Tim Finn about it, and he didn't really see the comparison. But I was like, okay, well, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I thought it looked like it. So that's why I'm saying that. So then I got some prints, some really cool prints with my omnibus that I'm going to share. So this is really cool. This is a variant cover, I believe. No, actually, it's one of the cards. One of the cards that came with the Cobra set of the Baroness. So I really like this. I think it's really a nice piece. And then there was the Snake Eyes card art piece, and then the Storm Shadow art piece. This is the cover that's on the issue 21. Again, and it's a very clear picture of that Storm Shadow. So these are all prints that came with it. So then there was a bunch of other tchotchkes that came with my omnibus that I'm going to show off here. I got the Joe one, so I ended up with the Joe sticker, the Joe patch, of the logo for I think it's the Skybound logo, GI Joe logo, if I'm not mistaken, and then this GI Joe pin, and they all match the logo of the GI Joe logo, I believe, from Skybound. So then it also came with a cool bookmark that has Storm Shadow version 2 on it, and it has Cobra Commander version 3, which these happen to be my two favorite versions of these characters. That's my favorite version of Cobra Commander, and that's my favorite version of Storm Shadow. So I'm very happy to have this as a bookmark when I'm reading my G.I. Joe comics and stuff like that. They're really cool. So then the main reason why I backed this Kickstarter is because of the card collections. I wanted the all the cards. I'm a card collector, and I think these are really cool. So the first was if you signed up for the newsletter and you became a member of the GI Joe Skybound GI Joe faction or Cobra faction on the Skybound website, you would automatically get the Storm Shadow card added to your Kickstarter. And so I did. And it is the cover of that issue 21 and that art piece that I showed earlier. So I really like that. I think it's a really cool cover and a really cool piece of art. And there's the back with all his statistics and stuff like that. So that was the first card I got. And then there was an exclusive Larry Hama card with Zap that was added to the Kickstarter. It was one of the later tiers that you could get. So there's Larry Hama with his sword, and Larry Hama has stats as well. Very cool. And then it was the Zap card that came with him. So there's the Zap card, and they're the stats for Zap. So those two cards came together. That was an add-on to the Kickstarter for Joe. So then there was the Cobra set, and then there was the Joe set of cards. So I'm going to go through each of these and show them off. So in case someone didn't get the cards, they can see what came with it. So the first was Snake Eyes. Again, that is the that print that came with my prints. And then there's his stats. And then you get Stalker. Stalker is really cool looking. And then Stalker's stats. And then you get Scarlet, of course. We had to have Scarlet. She looks really nice. And then Scarlet's stats as well. And then you get Hawk. I believe that's Hawk. Yeah, Hawk. Then Hawk's stats and a little bio on all these. And then you get Cover Girl, which Cover Girl's star has been rising lately with different figures and her appearance in the Duke series. She's been doing a really good job too. That's another character that needed development. There's her stats and her little blurb. And then we got Duke. Of course, we had to have Duke. I love this Duke art. That looks really nice. And then his stats. And then we have Beachhead. A lot of fans of Beachhead. Mike Irizarry is a huge Beachhead guy. And his stats and a little biography on him. And then we have Lady J. A lot of fans of Lady J as well out there. And that looks really cool. And then her stats. And then Flint. We couldn't have Lady J without Flint, of course. And then his stats. And then we ended up with Gung Ho, Cajun himself. And then his stats. And then the next one is Mutt and Junkyard. A really good friend of mine, Bill Leach, is a huge Mutt and Junkyard fan. That's his favorite characters. And then there you go. These cards are really beautiful, Steve, and I think they're worth it. And then there's a beautiful piece by of Roadblock that I really like. It looks like it would have been a GI Joe cover back in the day. And then his stats. And then my favorite, which I was very happy that they included, my favorite Joe character, Spirit. Does not get enough love. Spirit, Iron Knight, and Freedom. And then his stats. And then Shipwreck. There's a huge contingent of Shipwreck fans. I know a bunch of cosplayers that cosplay Shipwreck. And then his stats and a little biography. And then Jinx. Surprising that they included Jinx in there. A lot of fans of her as well. And then her stats. And then Tunnel Rat. Some of the rawhides are getting some love. And because Larry Hama was designed to look like Tunnel Rat, that's a really cool uh, uh, addition to this. Then his stats and a biography, and then Bazooka. Now that was a little bit out of left field that they included Bazooka, but I'm sure people will be happy about it. Looks really, really cool. And then his stats again, and we're back to Snake Eyes. So I love this set of cards. I think they did a really good job. um, I think I got all the cards. I don't know if there are any missing cards. I have to check to see if I missed any, and I'll have to try to hunt down. I hope that I got most of them, but I wanted this complete card set because they don't do cards of GI Joe and stuff that much. So when they announced this, I said, "Yeah, I'm going to get that." And there's a lot of really good artists that worked on these. Ron Wagner did some. I think there's a Larry Hama card. Some Rod, some Kubert art, and stuff like that. So a lot of different artists worked on the different cards. Uh, so I'm going to go to the Cobras now. So the first Cobra is, of course, Cobra Commander, and I really like this Cobra Commander. He like jumps out at you. He looks really cool in this pose, in this lighting, I guess. So there you go, Cobra Commander. And then, of course, he has his stats and biography there. And then next was the Baroness. Now, see, that's the Baroness print that I got. It's based on this card, which looks really, really cool. Then the Baroness's stats and biography. And then we ended up with the Destro. Destro was my very first character. McCullen Clan Destro, 1983 or so, was my first G.I. Joe toy that I ever got. And so I have a soft spot in my heart for Destro. And I really like this Destro too. There's his stats and biography. And then we end up with Major Blood. Now, I just found out Major Blood's from Australia. I always thought he was British, but apparently he's from Australia. G.I. Joe has a lot of Australian characters. So there you go. Major Blood looks really cool. And then his stats and biography. And then we ended up with Zartan. Now, this is a Ron Wagner piece, and it really looks creepy. He's coming out of that swamp. It really, really looks creepy. Now, I saw a full size piece of art at Assembly Required this year of this, and it looked really, really cool. So that's Zartan, and there's his stats. And then we end up with Serpentor, of course, and that's a Andy Kubert piece. We couldn't have a Cobra set of cards without Serpentor. Larry Hama is doing a big story right now in the comics with him. There's his stats and biography, and he's getting a lot of love in the comics. And then they have my favorite characters of all time, Tomax and Sama. And this piece of art is really cool. It's very dynamic. It has them like in a target. They look really nice. And so there's their stats. So I'm very happy that all my favorite characters are in this set, these two sets. So then we end up with Dr. Mindbender. And he looks really creepy in this card. He really does. So then his stats, and then we end up with Firefly, another one of my all-time favorite characters, Firefly. But this is version 1 Firefly. I really like version 2 Firefly a lot. So he looks really cool there. Then we have his stats and biography. And then we have Copperhead. Now, there's another character that was a bit out of left field I didn't expect, but he looks really cool in the water moccasin there, shooting away. And then his stats and biography. And then we have the Android Trooper. Now, that was another Ron Wagner piece of art. He had that at Assembly Required as well. And that looks really cool. It makes the bat look really creepy and all red like that. I love it. I think he did a really good job with it. There's his stats and biography. And then we ended up with one of my all-time favorite toys, the Crimson Guard, to go with my Crimson Twins. Another one of my all-time favorites. So this card set has like all my favorite stuff in it. It really does. Then stats and biography for him. And then we ended up with Crocmaster. Now, that was another one that was a little bit out of left field, but it looks really cool in this card. It looks really creepy and demonic in this card. And then his stats and biography. And then we have Zorana. We couldn't have Zartan without his sister, Zorana. She looks really cool. And then her stats and biography. And then we have Wild Weasel. Now, with the Dragonfly HasLab, it makes sense that we would get a Wild Weasel to go along with that. Looks really cool. And then his stats and biography. And then we ended up with Scrap Iron. Now, this Scrap Iron looks really nice. Get a good look at that. He's got his weapon and he's firing away. He's got fire around him. It's kind of similar to the Copperhead card. So that looks really cool. Then his stats. And then, now this one I was a little surprised about, but because we got some rawhides, it makes sense that we would have Globulus, and Cobra La is playing a big part of the Energon universe at the moment. So I think it's cool that we got Globulus as a card. And he looks really creepy in that card. He's yelling and stuff like that. So I think they did a really good job with this card set. I really do. They look beautiful. And then back to Cobra Commander. So I wanted to show all those items off that came with my Kickstarter. And I was very happy to get this. Maybe Skybound or someone could do a full card set down the road, and we can get a lot more Joes and Cobras and stuff like that. So now the next thing that I want to cover is recently, the Diamond Previews Guide again gave a sneak peek. Every year they do the Free Comic Book Day special, and they did an Energon one. If I can find the Energon, oh, there's the Energon one there. The Energon one last year, and there was a lot of surprises and sneak peeks to what was coming for the next year in this. And most people know that there's a good Baroness now that she joined. Let's see if I can find. Yeah, there's the good Baroness. She came out of that special. That's the variant cover A for issue 1. And so so she came out of that, and there was a bunch of other surprises and stuff like that. Cobra La was a surprise, and Transformers, it was a surprise. I'm not going to spoil that because Transformers is doing a really good job with that, and I want you to enjoy it if you do search out Transformers. But for this year's Free Comic Book Day, they announced another special. Right there. And let's read this. Energon Universe Special says the biggest names in comics bring you the biggest Free Comic Book Day release of the year with their all new stories from the Energon universe featuring G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Void Rivals. A perfect jumping on point for new readers with huge revelations for longtime fans. Exclusive original material says, so there's going to be original material in this that has not been seen before. So they've been speculating for a little while now that there's going to be a crossover with all their titles this summer. So I think that is alluding to that uh, Energon Universe crossover, which it makes sense because you've got Cobra La in Cobra Commander, you got Cobra La in Void Rivals, you got Transformers appearing in Void Rivals, you get Transformers appearing in Duke. You've got on the cover of this issue 1, they are standing on a Transformer. Uh, and so Transformers have Starscream merged, and this is another a sneak peek of what's going on in Transformers, but he's been merged with a Hiss tank in the latest issue. And so all the series have had little crossovers and little things going on, and it's just going to ramp up from there. So I'm just curious what you guys think. Will this crossover, what will this crossover be? What do you think they're going to do? Are we going to see new Joes, new Cobras? Are we going to see some deaths? Because we just got a death in one of the issues of GI Joe. I'm not going to tell you who that is. I don't want to spoil that story. But I think Robert Kirkman on Void Rivals, Joshua Williamson on G.I. Joe, and Tom Riley on Transformers. They're gearing up for a huge story, I think, and it's going to really shake Energon Universe, and it's going to put a lot of these characters in new and different places that we haven't seen them, and give us unique and different takes on these characters with these stories. That's really what I think it is. Being a longtime comic book collector and a longtime comic reader since I was like 8 years old, I've learned to kind of predict the patterns of these crossovers and stuff like that. It's no different than the all-in scenario that they did over the fall with Joshua Williamson, where they changed up a bunch of characters, they introduced new characters, they gave new series. So I think that's the same formula that we're going to get in Skybound. But the difference is, I think there's going to be a lot more twists, a lot better twists, because you got some incredible writers, incredible creators on these series. So what are those twists going to be? That's the key. That's the surprise that I'm looking forward to. And it's going to shock the comic book world again, because G.I. Joe was one of the highest sales comics of last year. Besides, I think the All-In Batman, and maybe uh, something else, another series. I can't think of it exactly, but there was another series that was really did very well last year. But G.I. Joe was one of the top 3 selling comics of the year. So I think that bodes very well for G.I. Joe and the Energon Universe. So what do you guys think out there? You can put it in the comments. So this was all of my deep dive into Skybound. I think they've done a great job. I'm very much looking forward to the future of G.I. Joe, Void Rivals, and Transformers. Other than Warren Johnson leaving, I'm kind of sad at that because he's done a great job. So we should be getting issue 3 of the new series this week. So I will be talking about that probably on whatever next video that I do to keep up with those. So thank you for watching. And if you want to see more deep dives into G.I. Joe material and brand merchandise like this, click like, share this video, get it out to your friends, because I do a lot of out of the box coverage and things that a lot of people don't cover. Obviously, G.I. Joe Comics is Talking Joe's main thing, so but I do it a little bit different. So nothing against them, but they do a great job. So mine is a little bit different, a different take on it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will talk to you next time. And yo, Joe!